Hey everyone, Jay here, and it's time for Python Lab 22. This time we're going to be creating some text files, reading and writing to and from and to that file, and we're going to put some text in there, read it out and print it out, and we'll do that. So basic text file operations are we're going to create the file if it doesn't exist. If it does exist, we can simply read from the file, or we can write to the file. And super important, when you finish working with the file, do not forget to close the file. Otherwise, it will remain open and you'll just have a little bit of memory attached to it for forever if you forget to close it, right? For as long as your program runs. So never, don't forget to close the files. So let's have a look at the code here. Let's get started. I have my main function here. I've created a file name as a string, calling the output file. And this is the file that we're going to create if it doesn't exist. If it does exist, we're simply going to read and write. It does exist because I ran it once already, but I'll show you what happens, and we're going to do some error handling as well. If it does or it doesn't exist and you're not sure, we have some things we have to handle there. But that's just a string, okay? I'm calling my three files that I have made below. Then I'm just saying goodbye at the end. This is all my main does, is create a string, pass that string once each to my three working files that I have created. So let's have a look at those. The first one is create file. That's this one here. Okay. And it takes an argument X. That's going to be the file name, right? Argument X. Yes, we should be using more descriptive things, but I chose to go simple today. So this part is new. We have try and accept. Okay, and we'll see what happens here. What this is going to do is sometimes when I run this code, the file will already exist. And if the file already exists, you cannot create the new file. So I'm using, let's have a look at this part here. I'm using the open command to have a variable called output file. I'm making that variable equal to, I'm opening file X, which is the file name, which is lab22 output.txt. And I'm passing the open function this parameter X, which means to create a new file. Okay, and we'll see what some other commands are later, but X is for creating a new file. And this file already exists, so it can't create a new file. It's going to have an error. Okay, and that error is going to completely halt the program, break everything if the file already exists. Now, I don't want to delete the file every time I test it, so what I do is I'm going to create the file, and I'm future-proofing my code here and saying try to run this piece of code, so try to create this file. If there's an error, we're going to do this second part instead, okay? And we're just going to print out a message that says file exists. So if there's an error, actually I should say file already exists, right? So if there was an error, we won't create the file. It's already been created, so I guess we don't have to do anything different, and the file already exists. If it's the first time it's run and we do create the file, the only thing I'm going to do in this function is open it with the create command with the X value here, and then close the file immediately, because this is just the create file function. It does nothing else. So we're just doing the very, very basic. We're creating a file and then we're immediately closing the file, right? And then that's the basic part. More advanced is we're error handling so that we don't have, so that I personally don't have to go in and delete the file every single time I run this code. And I might run this code a lot of times, right? So I'm saying, hey, if it already exists and it throws an error, okay, we won't break the whole program. We're going to just try to do that. If it does that, that's fine. We would do that. And if this part here in the try area, if this works without error, we will never do the second part. Okay, it's basically an if there's an error, do this. If there's no error, do that. That's basically what this try and accept is. And in many other languages, it's called try and catch. Okay, so that's the create a file. The next part, we're going to write the file. Now, technically speaking, read is easier than write, but you can't read anything unless it's been written to first. So we're going to do write first. And take a look at what we're doing in the write file. And I have a bug in here. Hopefully we'll catch it. First thing I'm doing is I'm opening the file with the W parameter that is for write only. Okay. Now I'm going to open it with the ability to write, which means that this output file variable in this function here, in the scope of this function, does not have the ability to read or create or anything else. It can only write, which is very nice if you write a program and you want your program specifically to write to a file, and maybe you copy and paste some code and you mess something up. You don't ever accidentally read, or vice versa. If you're read only, which is a huge security thing, right? You want to give a function read only permission. You don't want to allow it to write. So it's very important in the program, in like Python itself, that it has the ability to let things read only and let things write only. So that's what we're doing here. We're opening it with the ability to write, and that's it. And then I'm saying my output file, calling the dot method of it here, right? Output file dot write. So I'm going to write content to the output file, and the content that I'm going to write are just a few lines of code. So I have 4 lines, and I'm writing these steps for proper file management, colon, new line. Okay, I actually do want to put a new line character in there because dot write won't automatically do it for me. It's not like the print command that will automatically do a new line. This one will write exactly what you tell it to, no more, no less. So I'm going to put the new line in at the end. And the steps for proper file management are open the file, read or write the needed data, and finally close the file. Do not forget to close the file. And hopefully, at this very moment, if you haven't noticed already, my bug is I forgot to close the file in this function. So I'll just copy and paste it instead of typing it. Output file.close. You definitely want to close that. And I ran this thing like 10 times and never closed it. And so it's closed by now because the program stopped running, but while it was running. So my last one, this one is pretty cool. You'll see something maybe new here. This is the last one I have, read file. So again, I have my argument X, which is the file name. Now I'm saying my output file is open the file name X for read purposes only. And then I'm doing a little bit of magic here. I have a variable called full text, which I'm setting to blank. And then I have this crazy while loop that just says while true. And I have no way of stopping it. It'll just loop forever. I have one way. If you remember a previous lab, I have one way of stopping it. And I'm saying P1, just a weird variable name, I know. P1 equals output file dot read line. Now what read line will do is we'll take everything from an entire line of my file and read that and stick it into P1. And then I'm saying if P1 is empty, if it's an empty string, so if I read a line but there was no line to be read, that must mean I've reached EOF. EOF is the end of file. Okay, so if I reach nothing, I must have reached the end of the file. Now, If your file has blank lines in it, that's going to mess things up here. So this is not a universal solution, but it's good enough for me today. Okay, so if I've reached end of file, I'm going to break the loop. That's the way out. If I didn't reach end of file, else I'm going to take P1 and add it to or concatenate it to full text. Okay, and then I'm going to print full text at the end. And you'll see that it's going to come out all right. I actually have my output file. Let's switch over and see what it looks like. This is what my output file looks like, and it even has a blank line at the end. Okay, so it has each of these. That new line character actually did put a new line in there. And there we go. If I did put the new line character, all this would show up on one line and it would kind of mess things up. So that's it. I just have my if name main at the end. Okay. And let's give this a run. Okay, and let's scroll up here for you. So my file already existed because I have run this a bunch of times already today. And then I have my text and my goodbye message at the end. This is the text that was read from the file, which you can, yeah, okay, so now that I read it and I clicked back to my file, it said, hey, the contents have changed. Technically they're the same, but the file was updated. So I did get that error, not really an error, but a warning when I clicked back over to it. So that's files, creating files, reading from files, writing to files. Don't forget to close them like I did right there. Forgot that one. Okay. And then also, if you try to create a file and a file by that name already exists, you're going to get an error. Okay. In some programs, the read will automatically create the file if it doesn't exist. I don't believe this is universally true, which is why Python has a create file option to begin with. But that is a very nice feature. We did not talk about it until just now. All right, so that's it. That is lab 22. All right, we created a file, we wrote some data to that file, and then we read some data to that file. On the creation, we did something new with the try and accept. And on the read, we did a little something interesting with a infinite loop here that we had to then break out of when we reach the end of the file. So that's it, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.